Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Lily's Little Life Corner. As you can see, I am not in my usual spot. If you're listening on podcast platforms, that doesn't matter to you. But I am not at my usual spot because this is a bit of an impromptu episode and I didn't plan this episode. I talked in my previous episode how I had planned to talk about parenting and like parents and their flaws and make that kind of like a series, but some things have kind of happened over this past week that have made me kind of rethink some things and that have made me a little bit more pensive about, or maybe pensive not the right word, but like I've been kind of thinking about my place on YouTube. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about that. So this is going to be mostly off the dome. I don't have any notes. I did try to write some notes down, but they didn't apply anymore because I learned some other things that kind of contradicted what I had written in my notes. But I'm still, going to talk kind of a little bit about that. I filmed the antinatalism episode about a month ago, so I didn't edit it for a while. I hadn't watched it back or anything until it was time to upload it and until it was time to edit it. So I couldn't go back and refilm any of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I was stuck, doing my voiceovers. And I said this in that episode, when I do my episodes, I will kind of have an idea of what it is that I want to talk about, right? I'll have talking points, bullet points that I want to touch on. And so I will write those bullet points down and I will, do research as I'm writing the script or as I'm writing the bullet points that I want to touch on. I already talked about my scripting process and my insecurities with scripting and stuff like that in previous episodes, but if you haven't listened to those episodes, basically I had watched some creators both on TikTok and on YouTube kind of clowning the fact that podcasters need a script, and it was with a couple of particular podcasters that kind of had nothing to do with me. And so I kind of tried to scale it back and scale my scripting back. What I used to do with my scripting was I would usually write out everything that I wanted to say, and then that way I wouldn't do a lot of and but anyway, and all those filler words that people usually use. And I did that at the beginning of my podcast because I was insecure about how I talked. And I found it to be the best option for me, right? But at the same time, that makes sense because my podcast is not just a sit down and chit chat kind of thing. Oh, this week I went out to do this and this and this, right? That's not what my podcast is. My podcast does have research that I need to talk about, sometimes direct quotes that I need to mention. And so when I saw these TikToks and these YouTube videos kind of making fun of podcasters who need a script for their podcast, I was kind of maybe I should tone back and scale back the amount that I'm scripting, because I do want to come off as natural. I do want to come off as though I'm not reading a script. And if you go back and you actually watch some of my previous episodes, really only 3 episodes that I did with heavy 10,000 plus words scripts, you will see that it was really obvious that I was reading off of a script. And I also did not want to come off as that because this podcast, although it is a little bit educational, it's not the end all be all, right? Like I say all the time, I'm a psychology enthusiast, I'm not a psychologist, and also this podcast is meant to be kind of a jumping off point for you to then do your own research, make your own informed kind of thoughts and opinions, right? Have your own informed thoughts and opinions based off of the research that I present to you guys. So when I scaled back on the scripting and I tried to sound more natural, every time that I would go to edit my episodes, I would be I sound kind of dumb. And this isn't to like gather any pity or anything. I don't want you guys to like go in the comments and be like, no, you sound really smart, because I know that I can sound smarter. Like, this isn't me hating on myself. This is me thinking about how I used to sound, especially when I was in school, versus how I sound now. And I was talking to a friend about this. My reading comprehension level back then was pretty high. Now, I don't know what it is because I haven't tested for it. I haven't, done anything to improve my reading comprehension or to challenge my reading comprehension. I have bought, I want to say like 30 books. I bought 30 books-ish in 2025. I have not read a single one of them. I started one that I bought, in 2025. I bought it in 2025, and I couldn't get far enough. Really, the only books that I've been able to finish with a little bit of difficulty, but not related to my reading comprehension, have been the Percy Jackson books, the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, and the Percy Jackson Heroes of Olympus series. And the Heroes of Olympus series, I had difficulty finishing it because, like I said on a YouTube live stream, it was just so, like, you could tell that Rick Riordan was over it. And I'm scared to read his more recent releases, because if he was over the Percy Jackson kind of umbrella by the time that Heroes of Olympus came out, or The Blood of Olympus came out, you bet your ass he's gonna be completely over it a decade later, right? But yeah, so that had nothing to do with my reading comprehension. But what I did notice was that when I tried to read a Jane Austen book, I couldn't really see the points. And maybe this is because I did see a TikTok about this, where like older books, they kind of don't have a plot. So maybe it's the fact that it just doesn't really have a plot. It's Emma by Jane Austen. It's just kind of, talking about Emma's family and stuff like that. And so maybe that was the issue with that. But yeah, just in recent years, and as my screen time has gone up and my like focus time and being bored time has gone down, almost non-existent, I'm barely, like, whenever I do start to feel bored, immediately it's phone, computer, something to keep me entertained whenever I'm doing something like busy work, like chores, drawing. When I was when I was animating the frog, I had to have a TV show on that I could, look at the frog and then look at the TV and then look at the frog, look at the TV, right? As that has kind of gone on over these past couple of years in my life, I've noticed that I don't sound as smart as I used to. And that to me is very, very frustrating. And it all kind of came to a head in my previous episode where I talked about antinatalism. I filmed that episode about a month ago. It was supposed to go up on the last week of March. It didn't go up until, let's see if I can read it from here. It didn't go up until the 25th of April. So a month late, right? But I'm kind of glad that it was a month late, because I was able to gather some more research and kind of expand on the points that I had made. Some of the points that I had made about antinatalism, I had researched 2 months before I filmed the episode, because I was trying to batch film and trying to get ready for season 3. So when it came time to edit, and I went back and looked at the points that I had written and seen the whole episode kind of all together, I realized, I should expand on this part. I should expand on this, maybe show some statistics. Some of that was homelessness, the collectivism versus individualism. So I was able to expand on those and kind of, I thought, make my point clearer. But in kind of conjunction with me trying to make my point clearer, and as I was editing the episode, I kept thinking, like, the words that I'm using are words of, like, a middle schooler. They're very simplistic kind of words. Sometimes I forget the word that I need to use, or I use a different word than the one that I was supposed to use. Like, for example, when I said give labor instead of saying give birth, and that had happened to me in high school, but very like minimally, right? Not that much. Recently, it's been happening so much more to where I say something completely not correct. Like, I don't like the way that I sound. I don't like how I come off. And then also in the episode, I kept making the same point over and over again, which was, if you really care about harm reduction, you should go out in your community, right? Because the video was targeted towards the reactionary antinatalists, the antinatalists that are on TikTok fat shaming pregnant people, right? The antinatalists that are on TikTok side-eyeing parents, side-eyeing kids, thinking this kid should not even exist, like just having so much hatred for humanity and making their hatred for humanity known. That's who the video was kind of intended for, or those people who are kind of starting to go down that rabbit hole of hating humanity. And so that's why I made the points that I made. And that's why I brought up the homelessness thing, because a lot of antinatalists, specifically reactionary antinatalists, will say like it's selfish to bring a child into this world if you do not have the resources to care for the child, right? And so then my counter argument was, okay, yes, sure, I kind of see what you're saying, but there's two problems with this. The first problem is this could easily, if you're not careful with how you're going about it, with how you're talking about this point, like it's so valid to want your child, or to want any child, to have adequate resources. It's so valid to not want any child to be homeless, right? Super valid. I'm not negating that. And I think I made that pretty clear. I'm not negating that. I'm not saying that, homeless kids should exist everywhere, that every kid should be homeless. That's not what I said at all. That's not what I even implied to say. Nothing. I think it's pretty clear in my episode that I'm pretty against that, right? But the point that I made was the two issues with saying that homeless people should not have kids is, number one, it ignores how people become homeless, right? It's not always homeless people have kids. It's most of the time a stable family had a kid or got pregnant and then became homeless, unplanned, because of either natural disasters, their house went up on fire, a parent lost their job, whatever. Parent became disabled and medical bills forced them to live out of their car. Whatever it may be. That's the point that I made. It's you don't know how somebody can become homeless, and most of the time it's not homeless people are trying to purposefully get pregnant. It's not homeless people becoming pregnant. Most of the time it's somebody becomes pregnant and then they become homeless. And the second issue with that is that if you think, or if you say that a specific population should not have kids, that talking point can easily grow to become part of a eugenics conversation. And that's the point that I tried to make. However, as I was editing the video, I kept thinking, I sound like a 6th grader trying to explain my arguments against reactionary antinatalist talking points, I kind of sound a little bit uneducated on the topic, even though I did about 2 months of research on antinatalism, right? I looked into the philosophical argument. I watched TikToks of people being pro-antinatalist, but advocating for community support, right? Advocating for adopting a child, advocating for being active in your community, advocating for universal basic income, advocating for universal child care, and making sure that their community had support. I also watched TikToks of antinatalists who were more reactionary and who preferred to sit on their couch and point their finger at parents and say every parent is a selfish parent for becoming a parent, and you're selfish if you bring a child into this world. I watched people who were against antinatalists or antinatalist talking points, right? People who were saying, okay, like, yes, the world is on fire right now, but you can't just fat shame people who become pregnant. You can't just yell at a parent in public for trying their best. And then I also watched people who disagreed with antinatalists, but because they were conservative and right-wing, right? And people who were like, no, we need to get the birth rates up because we need to make America great again, or whatever. I watched the entire spectrum of antinatalists on TikTok. And then on top of that, I did research on homelessness and how many kids were homeless and how universal basic income can help families leave homelessness. I did research on ephilism, which is something that I never wanted to do because ephilism is so dark, but ephilism stems from antinatalism. It's a more extreme form of antinatalism, and it ultimately served my point. And my point being that if you're not careful with the talking points that you use when talking about antinatalism, you can easily slip down that rabbit hole and do something extreme. And that was the conclusion of my episode. That's what I had put in as a voiceover. I said, this kid, he bombed a fertility clinic because he had gone so far down antinatalism that his beliefs turned so extreme, and he's now dead because he bombed a fertility clinic because he was so enveloped in his hatred for humanity that he tried to end embryos, right? He tried to destroy embryos at a fertility clinic, and he ended his own life because his extreme beliefs led him to do that. This is why you need to be careful with pretty much any corner of the internet, but specifically because that episode was about antinatalism, specifically antinatalism, right? And even though I felt dumb watching myself back as I was editing the episode, I still, at the end of the day, think I did a really good job. I still think I made it really clear which section kind of antinatalists I was talking about, and I still think I made it clear that I'm not against antinatalism, and I'm not necessarily telling you to have kids, right? Not even necessarily, just I'm just not telling you to have kids. Okay, I'm not telling you one way or the other, you should have kids, you shouldn't have kids. The point that I try to make is how you talk about existence and humanity can very easily slip into harmful talking points. And that's ultimately what I was repeating as well as I made the episode that I ended up cutting out because I thought I made my point. You don't need to repeat it 5 more times. People are gonna get it. Your audience is smart. You don't need to handhold them as they're watching this video. And another thing that happened that kind of made me think your audience gets it, your audience is smart, is that for I think it was the female influencers, or these female influencers are not empowering or something like that, I got a comment that said, why do you feel the need to include so many disclaimers? We get it, we're not dumb. You don't need to include all the disclaimers. So also recently I've been trying to reduce the amount of disclaimers that I use, because I never wanted to come off as though I was thinking my audience is dumb, they're stupid, they're not going to get it unless I include a million disclaimers to, and even in the antinatalism episode, I had so many disclaimers that I just cut out. Because again, like I said, I don't want to treat you guys like you're dumb because I don't think you're dumb. I think my very liberal use of disclaimers came because I didn't want people to misunderstand me. And also it did come to connect it to my earlier points. I do think it came from me feeling like I'm not as smart as I used to be, and I'm not as articulate as I used to be. So I hope you guys can see like the math of the antinatalism episode. Like 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 8. And so then take that, right? And then imagine my kind of heartbreak and surprise when I start receiving comments, one comment in particular, dissecting my episode point by point and telling me how I'm causing harm towards the antinatalist community by conflating the internet antinatalists with antinatalists in general. So I'm sitting there, I'm reading my phone, and I'm like, oh no, I fucked up. I messed up. This wasn't my point, and the fact that somebody thought that this was my point really upsets me, because I worked really hard to make it clear that that was not my point. I was not trying to say all antinatalists are spreading harmful rhetoric, because I know that that's not true. And I thought I had made it clear that that was not what I was saying, right? I thought I had made it clear that I was saying that some antinatalists online are saying this and that. This person says that me using antinatalist talking points to talk about how those can lead down right-wing pipelines, and the reason why I'm not reading the comment off my phone is because I deleted it, and I'll let you guys know in a little bit why I deleted it, but I also did not take screenshots or anything. I just deleted them. This person essentially was saying, like, you're using general antinatalist talking points and linking them to right-wing conservative pipelines. And I will admit, I did do that. But again, the reason why I did that, and I thought I had made it clear in the episode, the reason why I did that is because I wanted to show how easy it is to fall down those pipelines. And I thought I had made that clear. And if I didn't, please let me know, because I really did think I made that clear. But this person was basically saying, like, you did not make that clear at all. You're blurring the lines, and this is a weak and ineffective argument. And so I kind of, I exited out, and then I logged back in to read the comment again. And I thought, like, I'm pretty sure I made it clear enough, like, to the point where somebody could, like, understand what I was trying to say. Even if I didn't maybe word it the best, I feel like I emphasized it enough how innocent things, such as not wanting kids to be homeless, can lead into homeless people should not have kids, and then that can lead into actually people of color should not have kids, and then that can lead into actually only white people should have kids, and then that can lead to actually only white people with high IQs can have kids, right? Like, that was essentially the point, and why I was bringing up, like, general talking points is to show how easily it can be to fall down pipelines. But I also made it really clear that I don't disagree with antinatalism. At least I think I did. Again, if I didn't, please let me know. So I replied to this commenter, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I think you missed the point of my episode, because I did at least try to make the distinctions that you're talking about. And this episode is not at all about antinatalists in general. It's about reactionary antinatalists whose only goal is to incite rage and incite worry, right? Whose only goal is to get people to interact with their content. That's who I was talking about. That's the kind of point of the episode. So then this person replies again and says, like, if that is your point, then, we agree. However, the way that you went about it in your episode made it very unclear that that was your point. So then I'm, thinking, Surely not. Like, I spent not just, a good amount of time scripting out like my talking points and making sure that that my script distinguished between the two groups, but then I also added voiceovers to make the distinction. And then I also added, more links in the description and the show notes to aid in that kind of distinction. And then again, like I said, the voiceover at the end, the summary summarized my point and made my thesis. My thesis of the whole episode was basically, it can be really easy to fall down right-wing pipelines through very innocent means, right? And we've seen this happen outside of antinatalism. We've seen this happen with clean eating, right? You start with, I don't want to consume microplastics. I'm going to try and switch to like a less plastic focused kind of diet. Like, instead of buying vegetables and putting them in plastic bags, I'm going to buy vegetables and put them in like a paper bag, or just not put them in bags at all and just let them chill out in my cart or in my basket. And then, maybe I'm not going to buy Tupperware. Maybe I'm not going to buy a laundry detergent that comes in plastic jugs. Maybe I'll get powder detergent that comes in cardboard boxes. Or like even more infamous kind of right-wing pipeline is, you want to eat cleanly, you want to feed your body the best that you possibly can, and then all of a sudden you're watching trad wife content on TikTok, and then all of a sudden you're thinking, I, as a woman, don't want to work anymore because it is my God-given right to be at home and to raise my kids and to take care of my kids and to look after my husband and to make sure my husband comes home to a full home-cooked meal, right? Right-wing pipelines happen everywhere, and I've talked about right-wing pipelines before on my channel and on this podcast. It's nothing new to me to talk about right-wing pipelines. And antinatalism was another, form of me discussing right-wing pipelines and how easy it is to fall down a right-wing pipeline. Like I said, it can start with you thinking, kids need the best parents that they can get. Kids need the best support that they can get. Kids need the most love and attention and affection and support. And then all of a sudden you're saying parents should take IQ tests and psychological exams before they have kids to make sure that they are fit to be a parent. That's eugenics now. Like, you've entered eugenics. You've entered the right-wing pipeline. You're a right-wing white supremacist now. Because, not just the fact that IQ tests are based in white supremacy, but also this idea that people should be excluded from having kids unless they pass some sort of test that society deems fit. Like, we've seen how those systems can easily change to exclude or include certain people, right? And it all started because you want kids to have a good home. And then all of a sudden you're talking right-wing topics. I'm saying all of this to say that when I received those comments from that particular person, I did feel a little heartbroken, because not only did it kind of come at a time when I was feeling insecure about how smart I sounded and how articulate I was able to be, but then it also attacked maybe is not the right word, but came at the points in my episode that I thought I had nailed, that I thought I had done well, right? Like, the whole time that I was editing the episode, I kept thinking, I sound really dumb. I sound like I have a lower education level than what I do, but at least I made my point. At least my point was clear, and at least people can understand that what I actually meant to talk about was that right-wing pipelines are so easy to fall down. And then this person came in and said, that didn't sound like your point at all. Your point actually sounds dumb. your point actually comes at antinatalists in general. And so I kind of went back and forth with this person, and I kind of was like, no, but I said this. And then the person was like, no, but you didn't. And then I had to be like, no, I did say that. And then the person was like, okay, if you did, then I guess we're in agreement, but it really didn't sound like you said that thing. And then, I replied, and then they replied, and I was looking at the notification on my phone, and I realized something that I should have realized sooner. But guys, I don't usually look at your usernames when you comment something. I usually just read your comment, especially if it looks like it's going to be a really good comment. Then I'm just going to skip over your username and just get right into the comment, right? Because I'm very excited to either start a discourse with you or agree with you, disagree with you, whatever. So I did not read this username until later on in the night when I got the notification on my phone. I was doing something on my computer, and then I looked at my phone and I read the username, and it had AI in it. So I was like, okay. I was thinking, maybe it's not AI, maybe it's AL, and that's like their name. Their name is Al, And so I go on my computer, and I click on their profile, and I am reading, like, it's an entire page made up of AI videos. It's AI everything. And that's when I'm like, wait, I've just been arguing with ChatGPT. I hadn't been arguing with a person who had their own thoughts and opinions and who, genuinely felt like my episode was really bad at making the distinction. I'm arguing with someone who used AI to make their talking points. And honestly, in hindsight, it did seem like they were using AI. The first comment, I didn't really catch it because they had listed points from my episode, like all the way through my episode. So it was clear to me that they had watched my entire episode. But when I commented back to them and said, oh, I'm so sorry, I think you missed my point, their reply to that was the same reply that they had commented in the first place, except just different wording. So that should have been my first red flag, but I honestly gave them the benefit of the doubt perhaps for too long, and I did not realize that they were using AI until I noticed their username. And I have actually an episode on my podcast talking about AI and how against AI I am. And I even, in the very same antinatalist episode, when I'm trying to encourage young antinatalists to get out into their community and to help their community out, I even say, like, something that you can do to help outside of sitting on your couch and posting on TikTok and talking about how awful you think parents are is you could go out into your community and you could petition to have AI data centers in your area taken down, or any AI data centers that are being built, have them like not be built in your community. Like, I even make a point against it's no secret, and I make it no secret on my podcast that I am against AI. So to have someone come into my God-given podcast, it's not God-given, but to come onto my podcast where I am against AI, and I even say in that very episode, I'm against AI, get your representatives to agree to not build AI data centers in your area. I have someone using ChatGPT and arguing with me about points that I thought I had made really clear, and I felt so violated, I think is the correct word to use in this instance, because ever since I got that comment, I can't stop thinking about, what if they put my video into ChatGPT, and what if they asked ChatGPT to summarize it? And then that's how they made their talking points. I don't know that, right? And I can never know that, because even if I ask them, hey, by the way, did you do this? What if they lie to me? Like, how can I be sure that they're telling the truth? So yeah, I felt really violated. And this comes after, or this was happening while TikTok rolled out a new feature that allowed their AI to remix your content. And it was where they could take your content and then add, like, put it into a generative AI software and make it spit out something completely different. And so it would use your likeness, your voice, but you could be saying something completely different, or, you know, the background could be changed, and it could be like, instead of you standing in front of your couch or something, right, sitting on your couch, you're instead laying on the beach or something, right? It was happening as AI rolled out that, or as TikTok rolled out that feature. And so instead of, or aside from feeling violated because I wasn't sure if some stranger on the internet had put my content into an AI software, I was also having to go through all of my TikToks and uncheck that setting. And that's what I do every single time I upload content anywhere. Anytime that they have anything to do with AI, YouTube also has this where they have like allow remixing, allow automatic chapters, allow automatic locations. I uncheck those boxes. I uncheck as many AI content boxes as I'm able to, because I don't want my content to be fed to AI. Like, that's not what I want. So I was reading their comments and I was like, hey, what if they put my episode through AI? Like, that's all that I could think about. And I'm not even necessarily arguing that because they were using AI that their argument is not valid. Although on a personal level, I do believe that, yes, I'll be honest. But the thing that bothered me the most is that I don't know if they watched my content. I don't know if they watched my episode or if they just fed it to an algorithm and asked the algorithm to summarize it. Therefore, I don't know if they were arguing in good faith, and I don't know if my episode actually came across the way they said it came across, right? Because they were accusing me of coming across completely different to my point. But because they were using AI, and because I'm not sure that they submitted my episode into a LLM, I can't be sure that their argument means anything. And so that's what I've been kind of battling with is, was the episode actually good? Did it actually make the points that I thought it made? Or is this person correct? And I can't be sure until this episode goes up and you guys tell me whether that antinatalism episode was good or not. So when I pointed out, like, you're using AI, because also they were talking about harm reduction to me, and they were saying, like, most antinatalists are concerned about harm reduction. They are trying to, you know, participate in harm reduction, trying to reduce harm. So then I start to realize, wait, they're using AI. So I comment, like, I don't think you have the right to talk to me about harm reduction when you are actively harming people by using AI. Like, this person isn't just using ChatGPT to write stuff for them. They're also using it to generate images and videos, which consumes so much more water than regular internet usage, which is also what they tried to claim after I called them out for using AI. Because they were like, using AI has nothing to do with harm reduction. Yes, it does, because it uses significantly more water. Specifically, how you specifically are using it uses significantly more water than regular internet usage. Me uploading this video doesn't use as much water as me generating multiple entire videos with just AI generated content. Not to mention, I don't use AI at all, aside from, like, what I'm forced to use, right? Aside from, like, using social media, I don't use AI at all. And I even go out of my way to make sure that I'm not using it in social media. Like, whenever I can, I actively avoid it. Sometimes it's not unavoidable, right? The whole, like, act of uploading content onto social media and having a social media profile, you can't really, like, if you have social media profiles, you can't really prevent it 100% unless you delete your social media profiles. But aside from that, I go out of my way to actively avoid it. But then also, like, the water used for AI data centers cannot be recycled. So that water is gone. That's not harm reduction, because AI data centers are being built in places that are disenfranchised, places where people of color live, places where the disabled and the elderly live. When they were commenting, I had gotten the impression that they were not the kind of antinatalists that I was talking about in my episode. When I went to their page, and I even like talked to them as though like we're in agreement, you know, like we're the same kind of people, we have the same beliefs. But then I went on their YouTube page and I found out that no, we actually do not have the same beliefs. They're actually the kind of antinatalists that I was talking about in my episode. The kind of antinatalist that is reactionary, the kind of antinatalist who only uses antinatalist talking points to try to get people to interact with their content. And then I was like, well, no wonder they were so offended by my episode, because like the other antinatalists in my comment section were not offended by my episode. They were just like, yeah, I'm antinatalist because of X, Y, and Z, right? But this person in particular was like, no, you're conflating the 2 points, you're etc., basically trying to discredit me because I am assuming they were offended by what I said. So after I realized, you know, they're using AI, like it's not worth it to argue with someone who only uses AI. So after I realized that, I just deleted their comments. Also, they commented under Kath's comment, and for those of you guys who don't know or who are, you know, new to my channel, Kath is a longtime subscriber of mine. She's been around since my podcast has been around. And in almost every single episode, she comments and she has something supportive to say and she adds to the conversation. In this particular episode, she's the same. But what she said, based off of what I had said in my episode, is... Actually, let me pull out her comment, because her comment I still have. I forgot to like and heart a comment, so I did that. Okay. So Kath says, "Hi Lily, my heart would be sad if I was not allowed to have children. It's a freedom we all should have the choice to do if we are of sane mind. So true what you mentioned about not knowing ahead how the father will act. Great episode, Lily." This is along the lines of all of her comments, right? They mention something that I mentioned in the episode, and then they're overall just supportive. The person who I was arguing with commented under Kath's comment and said, with an entire like ChatGPT paragraphs long response, essentially calling Kath selfish because Kath said, "My heart would be sad if I was not allowed to have children." If you guys have not watched that episode, what I said was that the only way to force people to not have kids would be to do forced sterilization, which also, you know, stems from eugenics and is overall just not harm reduction. Surgeries can go wrong. You don't have the consent of people, you know. It's overall just not harm reduction. So I said the only way that you can force people to not have kids would be forced sterilization. So that's what Kath was referring to, is she would be sad if she lived in such a society where everybody was forcibly sterilized. And like, also, just by the way, I know this commenter had no way of knowing this, but Kath is in her 60s and already has had her kids, right? Her kids are adults, like they're full autonomous beings, like there's nothing we can do about that. But it was just so like disheartening to see that, and that's when I decided to delete all of their comments, because they had taken the argument to someone who had nothing to do with the argument, first of all. Kath was minding her own damn business. Like, she had nothing to do with the conversation, nothing to do with the argument. This person had taken the argument to somebody else. You can say all, like, whatever you want to me, not whatever your LLM wants, whatever you want to me, and we can continue to go back and forth. But then don't shame somebody else for an opinion that they have that is contradictory to yours. And this is what I mean by, like, this person, ironically, was the kind of antinatalist that I was talking about in my episode. They're the reason I made the episode in the first place. And it was just so interesting to see that, like, cognitive dissonance, I guess, but it was very interesting to see how they kept saying, like, no, like, antinatalism is like a philosophical argument, and, like, not every antinatalist is the way that you're mentioning, and, like, yeah, every community is gonna have rude people, like, you, my sister in Christ, you are the rude people in antinatalism, because you're going out of your way to shame somebody who's already had kids and calling them selfish when you don't know their situation, you don't know how they're living, you don't know clearly. I mean, even though they made, like, point by point, like, this is what you mentioned and this is when you mentioned it, like, at the beginning you said this and then towards the middle you said this, even though they did that point by point breakdown, their response to Kath showed me that they did not actually comprehend what I was saying, or worst case scenario, that they did not watch my episode and that they just had ChatGPT summarize it. And honestly, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, sometimes when I'm feeling really sad about the state of the world, I start to think, like, what is the point of becoming smarter if disclaimers like are a necessity, right? And not even, like, disclaimers like, I don't know, the Copyright Fair Use Act, or, trigger warnings. I'm not talking about those disclaimers. I'm talking about the kind of disclaimers that I used to use and I'm still tempted to continue using, the kind of disclaimers that dumb down my content for people to not use any kind of loophole, any kind of, anything to discredit or diminish my opinion and what I'm saying. Sometimes when I have to interact with people like that, I do think, like, what is the point of becoming smarter and trying to become more articulate to attract a smarter audience, or to attract the smartest audience that I can attract, if there are people like this person who are just going to use bad faith arguments to argue with me? And not even, like, they were not arguing with me. They had their ChatGPT LLM bullshit argue with me. So it wasn't even like they're against my points. It's their AI is against my points, or was asked to come up with an argument to contradict everything that I was saying, right? So sometimes I do think, like, maybe I do need these disclaimers where I'm, talking about, like, the disclaimers that I use where I'm saying, right, like, I'm going to be talking about X, and I know that sometimes X is Y, or I know that sometimes X and Y are paired together, but I'm actually not talking about Y. So please don't say that I'm talking about Y. And that's one thing that I appreciate about having a smart audience, is that even when I feel dumb, and even when I feel like I'm not articulating the best, or even when I feel like I'm not explaining the best, my audience can use their brains and can use the context clues, and they can figure out that I'm in fact not being insensitive. I just worded something a little bit funny, right? That in fact I'm not, thinking that Australia is in the west when it's actually in the east, that I'm not talking about anything geographical, right? You guys can figure that out. But sometimes I do come across people like this person that I'm talking about who consume my content, and I'm going to assume the best of them. And I'm going to assume that they actually sat there and watched my episode. And that's how they got that, like, at the beginning you said this, and then you said this, and then you said this, and then you said this, right? I'm going to assume the best of them, and I'm going to assume that they actually watched my episode. Sometimes I get people like that who watch my entire episode from start to finish and still argue with me because they're using bad faith arguments and they're nitpicking my words and the words that I chose to use. And they don't want to argue their, like, position. That's not their end goal. Their end goal is to have, like, a reactionary kind of response, right? Where they can be like, aha, you're getting angry because I'm right. That's what they want. That's their ultimate, people like that, that's what they want. That's their ultimate goal, is they don't want to argue because they want to have an intellectual conversation with you, and they want to have an open mind, and they want to see your point of view, or they want to give you the benefit of the doubt. They want to argue with you because they want to feel like they're better than you. They want to feel like they're winning over you. And yeah, when I run into people like that, I do think, like, if I'm gonna run into them anyway, then what's the point of becoming articulate? They're gonna find loopholes wherever they can, and if they cannot find loopholes, then they'll just twist my words and they'll just continue arguing with me that way. But I decided that I actually owe it to myself and to my loyal audience who has been with me since the beginning. I owe it to you guys and to myself to become as smart as I possibly can, so that you guys don't have to sit through like 5 minutes of disclaimers and 5 minutes of me stuttering over my words and trying to string together words into, a coherent thought. You guys deserve the best content that I can possibly put out. That's why I bought a new microphone. That's why I've switched out the pop socket, because before it used to be this little fuzzy pink thing, but then whenever I would do my voiceovers, I felt like I came out sounding really muffled. So that's how I got this little pop socket thing. It's not a pop socket, pop filter. That's why I got this webcam, right? That's why I have the ring light behind me. It's because you guys deserve the best quality content that I can possibly put out. And speaking about that, in addition to me feeling insecure about how I sound and me feeling insecure about, sounding dumb and sounding like I have less education than I actually do, I also recently, to be completely honest with you guys and to have full transparency, I have been a little bit lazy with the way that I do my episodes. I've talked about this before, but genuinely, I think it's reached kind of a little bit of a breaking point, if you will. I don't think like a 1-week turnaround is doing this podcast justice. I think I've become very lazy in terms of how I research things because I'm trying to, push out the content every week. And every week I need to have a new episode. Every week I need to, come up with the idea, script the points, and then edit, and then also in the edit, add more stuff through voiceovers, right? So I am thinking about looking into different ways that I can either make my episodes shorter and streamline the process that way, or switch to a bi-weekly thing where it's instead of once a week, it's once every 2 weeks, so that I can have the time to really get into it and really try and figure out what it is that I want to say, number one, and number two, figure out the best way that I can say what it is that I want to say in a way, and by the the best way. I mean, not like to prevent arguments like that, but to attract an audience that isn't like that. Because I feel like where I'm at right now, I'm attracting people who can see that I don't really know what I'm talking about. And that's not to say that I don't know what I'm talking about, because with antinatalism, I knew what the fuck I was talking about, right? It's just that I didn't articulate it the best. Perhaps. You guys are gonna have to let me know. Again, if you watched my antinatalism episode, please let me know if you believe that I articulated myself well or not, okay? And be honest. People who are interested in bad faith arguments, I feel, can sense my insecurities surrounding that. So then they're more willing to like, well, actually, you said this and it's actually supposed to be this. So that's why you're, insert insult here. But I feel like if I know what I'm saying, like if I'm able to articulate well, and if I'm able to point to my sources, I won't get as many of those comments. I'm still expecting a couple, right? But hopefully it's not as many. Because look, also something that I have to come to terms with is people who are looking for bad faith arguments are gonna bad faith argue. Whether you have your sources linked or not, whether you've made yourself clear or not, they're still gonna argue because that's the goal for them. That's what they want. So that's also really frustrating is, I could put together the most like high quality academic research paper type of episode ever, right? With multiple citations and sources and interviews with experts and professionals, and somebody will still be like, actually, I disagree, right? Because that's kind of the whole state of the world right now. It's misinformation. And if a person scrolled on Twitter and saw something that kind of went against your point, even if you have like scientific research and data backing you up, the person who saw a blurry screenshot on Twitter contradicting your points is gonna feel like they know more than you, who put in blood, sweat, and tears into whatever point you're trying to make, right? So yeah, that's something that I personally have to come to terms with. But I'm hoping that if I attract more of you guys, more smart cookies, more smart people, that then I can have people on my corner be like, she never said that. Like, you're just making stuff up, right? And then that way I don't really have to stress about like, wait, did I actually say this or did I not say that? But yeah, so that's what I'm hoping to do, and watch me get smarter in the coming months, because yeah, I personally, it is really frustrating having thoughts in your head be more articulate than like actually speaking, because when I'm speaking, and some like neurodivergent people experience this where their brain is going like super fast, right? And so then they can't talk fast enough to articulate themselves. I feel like I used to struggle with that, but now I'm on the opposite end where my brain is moving slower than my mouth. So then I have all these pauses in my speech. And, this also came to light when I was editing this particular antinatalism episode, where I was like, damn, girl, just get to the point. Because I just kept having pauses in my speech at like random places, and it's because I can't think as fast as I used to. So I have random pauses in my speech that I either have to edit out or that I cannot edit out because it's too close together, but it's still far enough away and enough of a pause that it's annoying, right? So then you guys are stuck just listening to like random pauses in sentences where they don't belong. I just did that. right now. And again, like I said, you guys deserve better. You guys deserve the best content that I can possibly give you guys. And you know what, to be fair to me, sometimes those pauses in my speech happen because I'm over salivating. This is an issue that I've developed with my braces, but hopefully soon my braces come off, and hopefully soon I will stop producing so much saliva to where I have to randomly pause in the middle of my sentence just right. I hope that did not sound disgusting, but yeah. I actually forgot to say before I go, aside from letting me know what you think about my episodes, also let me know what color cat you think I am. Ignore the black shirt that I'm wearing. Like, just off the top of your head, thinking about me and my personality, not necessarily how I look right now, but just thinking about me and my personality, what color cat do you think I am? Please and thank you. Anyway, that'll be it from me. Please give me your honest feedback on my episodes, and please do let me know, like, what do you actually think of my episodes? And do you think that sometimes I don't articulate myself very well? Do you think that I articulate myself enough? Be honest with me, okay? I can take it. As long as you're not using, and I said this, it's the pinned comment on my previous episode. As long as you are not using an LLM to construct your arguments and your thoughts, you can say whatever it is you want to me, okay? I'm gonna leave your comment up, and if I don't like it, I don't like it, but I'm gonna leave your comment up. I'm not gonna delete it, okay? Even if it's the most offensive thing ever, I'm not gonna delete it unless you're using AI to construct your arguments, okay? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I will hopefully see you guys in the next week. If not, I will do kind of like an update episode to let you know if my upload schedule has changed or not, or you know, whether I'm going to be taking a break from Lily's Little Life Corner, whatever it may be. I will keep you guys updated. Check out the Tumblr in the description. That is where I update if you guys are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And yeah, also on my YouTube page, that's also where I update. Sometimes I do live streams, so if you're interested in that, check that out. But otherwise, I'm gonna go. Thank you for watching, and thank you for staying to the end if you did. I love you. Okay, and now, bye.